Alright, how's it going everybody? My name is Infamous Isaac, and I'm here redoing the intro for this video because it was terrible. It was actually garbage. I mentioned the name Final Fantasy VII like over 30 times, and it was just so repetitive and annoying, I had to redo it. But today I'm going to be talking about Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. It's a movie based off or a continuation of the original game itself before the remake came out. So this is the sequel that you got for or after that, after completing it way back when in 2005. But I'm gonna be talking about the movie, and I'm not gonna go into the game spoilers itself because I had to look up a video by Oni Black Mage on Final Fantasy VII Original. Jeez, I want to limit myself to not saying the full name entirely, but yeah, I had to look up a video for the original game itself because I didn't know anything on it. I never played the games. I never played the remake. All I've seen is just gameplay from a friend and a let's play on the remake that came out a couple years ago. So the original game itself, never seen it, never seen Avid Children, and I had to look up a summary for it because of that. So I looked it up and I went into this movie knowing like, all right, this is a continuation. This is what I have to know. And I recommend doing that as well, if anything, because it's a continuation, right? So it's gonna play off of some points on that. But after watching it, I can tell you that if you don't do that, that's perfectly fine because the movie is also meant for casual people who may have never played the original game to just go right in. So if whatever you do, it's all up to you. If you want context for what happens, sure. If you don't want context, you just want to enjoy the movie, go right ahead. It's all up to you. But without further ado, I'm going into this with the only knowledge before that being Kingdom Hearts 2, seeing them in there, just Kingdom Hearts in general. Final Fantasy 15 be my only excuse me, the only game from that series that I've ever played, and a summary. So without further ado, hope you all enjoy the video. And now let's go back to the past me. So I'm gonna be honest. When I first started watching this movie, like at the halfway point, I thought it was mid, like wholeheartedly mid. The first hour of the movie, I was bored, like super, super bored. I was gonna give this movie like a 3, even though I didn't want to. Like I wanted to give it a chance, but I was so bored watching the first half of the movie because it feels like the age on this movie is showing. But I'll explain that in a second. The second half of the movie was great. I'll say that to contrast the beginning. The first half is boring, the second half is great. And if I had to give it a rating off of that alone, it's a 6. This movie is a 6 out of 10. At its worst, it's a 4. At its best, it's a 7. But overall, it's a 6. Generally, this movie equates to that. And the reason for that is because again, the beginning for me was just so unbearably boring. I never watched the movie sitting there looking at the time that it has left, thinking, all right, the movie's almost over. That's good. I was I was so bored that I was waiting for the movie to end. Like obviously I could have stopped watching it and just finished it there, but I wanted to see it through to its conclusion. So I forced myself to see it through, and that kind of ruined its enjoyment for me for the first half because I was bored with the plot of it. Like Geostigma is a cool premise in terms of what happens after the end of Final Fantasy VII, so that's cool. And the villains were really boring. Like they to contrast that the villains were really boring is what I'm trying to say. I just couldn't attach myself to them whatsoever because in the movie they're there as a way to resurrect Sephiroth with Genova's head and bring him back so he can use the planet as a way to as a vessel basically to travel through space and grab another planet and basically use it there. And that's cool and all, like that itself is also cool. But the villains themselves, the antagonists, were just so boring. They're so bland and uninteresting to me. I didn't care about them at all until the second half of the movie where Sephiroth shows up himself. Like Sephiroth was way more interesting, and he was edgy and sometimes dropped some corny lines, but he was way more interesting and had more weight to the story and investment for me because of how popular and important Sephiroth is to Final Fantasy VII entirely. So I only got interested when Sephiroth showed up, basically, in terms of the antagonist. But the story overall, it was simple. It was fine. It took reins from Final Fantasy VII and continued off of it. Not like a oh new person shows up and now they have to save the day. While new people did show up, it was remnants of that. So it's not too much of a reach if you look at it that way. But to some people, it very well could be. So I can understand why. But story wise, it was alright. It was serviceable. I don't have anything to use it on, like a basis, like oh, compared to this Final Fantasy game or compared to Seven original since I never played it. But this movie, like as a standalone movie, is just the plot was alright. It was legit just alright. The animation, on the other hand, I is what always intrigued me about this movie, is because it has the AMV or not AMV the movie feel that all the Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts games have, like the Square Enix animation that they have in the beginning of the games that they do, like Kingdom Hearts animated movies that they have in the beginning of their games. Beautiful, actually stunning. Like, have you ever, if you've never seen Kingdom Hearts 2's intro, like the animated intro, you should look it up as a basis to show what Advent Children looks like, because you're going from polygonal looking characters on a PlayStation 1 to 2005, like almost 10 years later, looking like full on Pixar level movie animation. It's awesome, It's actually awesome. The animation, like compared to now, having Final Fantasy VII remake and seeing how beautiful that looks, and it just being the base gameplay, like that's how it looks, is amazing in itself. That's a technical marvel. Like I can't even begin to understand how we can go from Advent Children being a movie to Advent Children being lower quality than Final Fantasy VII remake. Like that's insane to me as a comparison. But for it coming out in 2005, like over 12, no, not over 12, over over 17 years ago. There you go, over 17 years ago, and it's still looking like a, pretty serviceable. Granted, it when you look at it more and you watch the movie more, you start to realize like this movie looks kind of butt some places. It looks kind of crusty, and granted, again, 17 years old, but it's still impressive even today. It's it's good in some spots and it's bad in others, but overall, I'm really impressed. The fact that they managed to make a movie look like that in 2005. It's awesome, I love it. But one complaint I do have is how the movie just looks so gray, bleak, and bland the entire way through. The only time it looks better is when you get to like the end of the movie where Cloud is fighting Sephiroth and it's like s- going to like the sunset. There you go. It's going to like sunset, and it that's the only place where the colors vary, because from the beginning to up to that point it was just gray and it was bleak. And granted, considering how Final Fantasy VII ended and what happened after that, I can see why it's bleak. Like, Midgar is in ruins, complete ruins, so I can see why it looks like that. But even then, like, just a little more color, just a little more saturation, I guess. Like it just looks so, it looks so boring with the way the colors just don't vary from the entire movie or almost the entire movie. It just feels so gray, depressing. Which, I can see being a vocal point or a focal point because it is so gray and depressing with geostigma running around, which is basically a disease that came about from the ending of Final Fantasy VII. But you know, it basically place like 2 years after Final Fantasy VII. It's like, dang, this is cool. While it's sad to think about that 500 years or 498 years later, like there's not gonna be like they're not gonna be here. Midgard's gonna be in ruins. It's like, dang, that's really sad. But At least they're alive now. You know, everybody's gonna die, so might as well just enjoy it now. But you know, overall animation, it was great. It was great, but it could also be really bad. Like, well, not really bad, but more like boring in some places and just uninteresting with the color scheme. But next is voice acting. Voice acting to me was yikes, bro. It it varied heavily, but overall it wasn't great. The voice acting was not great at all. And I don't know if that's the actor's fault or the voice direction. I couldn't tell you because I'm not a professional. But to me, listening to the English voice actors act, it wasn't impressive. Tifa's voice actor I didn't like at all. I just thought it was hard to listen to sometimes. Like even trying to imitate a normal conversation just felt weird, especially when she was talking to Cloud. Like Cloud barely shows any emotion, so having Tifa trying to show emotion but it not coming through as well as it should, it's just like dang, yo, this isn't that good. My favorite voice actors, well, honestly, was Reno's voice actor, Reno, and honestly, yeah, that's it. Reno, maybe Yuffie, maybe Barrett, maybe Sid. But besides that, everybody else was just monotone, like Sephiroth or Cloud or Rude or Vincent or a lot of people. Like there was so many monotone voice actors. It's just like it's hard to tell, but it's bleak, so I guess it fits. But it's like it's just it doesn't sound good when you when you hear it. But Reno was great because he acted different from everybody else. Oh, Zach too. Zach had a great voice actor. I enjoyed it because his was different. His voice actor was way different compared to everybody else. So Reno, Zach, Yuffie, Barrett, Sid, you know, Kate Sith sounded pretty good. And we barely heard Red 13, so you know it's whatever. But voice acting, it was really unimpressive and unremarkable. I didn't mind it too much, but when I minded it, geez, it was rough to listen to. But you know, voice acting aside, action, like which coincides with the animation, but not it's not the same. So the action in the first half of the movie, I was bored. I was really bored because to be honest with you guys, most of the action in this movie takes place on a motorcycle. Cloud uses his motorcycle like not in like Final Fantasy VII Remake where you know it's only like a mini game or whatever. It's like two mini games. In here, excuse me, Cloud is fighting on his motorcycle majority of the time, like 70 to 80% of the movie. He is fighting on his motorcycle with a sword against the main antagonist. The entire time, it's just him fighting the main antagonist on a motorcycle for most of the movie until the end of it. And yeah, honestly, until the end of it, and maybe like halfway through where he's in the forest with all that glowing stuff and the kids are there. But in the first half of the movie, I wasn't impressed by the action. I was just really bored because A, the camera was moving too much, so I couldn't tell what was going on, and it was just dizzying for me. Because I'm not good at imagining things like that visually, like visually imagining something. If the detail isn't there for me to imagine like an action scene, or if it's really well detailed but they're talking about movement, I can't imagine it too well. So it just falls on deaf ears for me. But seeing the movement like that and the camera trying to keep up, it's like it just it didn't look good to me whatsoever. So to me, I was just sitting there like, dang, that's cool. Like it may be cool to some people, but I just want to kind of move on from this, honestly. I don't want to see any more of the action. I just want to get to the story, or at least finish the movie because this action isn't doing it for me. But then you get to the second half of the movie. It's like, oh, Cloud versus Sephiroth. The action there is pretty fire. So I messed with that. But the first half of the movie, I didn't like the action at all. I was just bored and disinterested. And that sucks because I genuinely wanted to like this movie because my friend sounded so hype about it. Like I don't know what his opinion of it is. I gotta ask him after I'm done. But for me, the first half of the movie was just again so lackluster and boring. It was bleak, it was bland. It just didn't interest me. I don't like talking about stuff like this in such a negative tone, but it's something that I just have to say. Like I can't enjoy that first half of the movie. In the second half, I enjoyed it. I was getting emotional with some of it, but it's just the second half can't outweigh it. I'll look at it positively because of the second half. It was way better, but the first half is just like it brings it down. I can't bring myself to ever give this movie an 8 or a 7 or a 9 or a 10. Like 6 even to me is pushing it, but at the same time the second half is just way better. So I have to give it a 6. Anything higher is too much and anything lower is like okay. At a certain point it's justifiable, but like a 5, but anything below is mean. Anything below is just being unnecessarily mean. To me this movie is wholeheartedly a 6. So with that, one positive that I do still have left is the music. I think this movie uses instrumentation from, or not instrumentation, music from the original game, and it changes it to match the movie. Well, some of the movie's music isn't that great. Like some of the rock music when Ka Kadaj, I think is his name, how to pronounce it. When he was talking to the children, the rock music started playing. I was just bored. I didn't like that music there, but Sephiroth's music was great. A lot of the music when they were fighting that giant animal in the city was great. I enjoyed it for the most part, but there were some stinkers in there that I just didn't like with the music. And to cap it all off, one thing that I liked myself with it was something like more with nostalgia for me was again I mentioned Kingdom Hearts 2 in this, how Cloud shows up in here and seeing him in his Advent Children outfit in the actual Advent Children movie. It was like, yo, that's so sick. Now I know why he looks like that in Kingdom Hearts 2. Because in Kingdom Hearts 1, Cloud looks normal. He looks like his normal self, except with like a weird like robe over him. I don't remember if Yuffie or whoever shows up. Like I think it's just Cloud. Cloud and Sephiroth show up in Kingdom Hearts 1, but Kingdom Hearts 2, we have everybody showing up. You have Sid, you don't have Barrett, you have Tifa, you have Aerith, you have Cloud himself, you have Yuffie, and yeah, that's it. I don't remember if Vincent shows up. I don't think so. Red 13 either. Kate Sith, I don't think so either. But for the most part, those important people show up, and seeing them in their Advent Children outfits is so cool to me. It's so sick because now I know like, yo, this is I knew that's where it happened before, but seeing them there in the actual thing and seeing how they were supposed to look in the movie setting itself is like, yo, that's sick. That's so sick. Seeing it all come together like that and how important it actually was for Sephiroth and Cloud to fight in Kingdom Hearts 2 is like having both fan bases collide is cool. It's really cool. So I enjoyed that for that part of it. But that's mostly for me because that's only nostalgia that you would have if you played Kingdom Hearts 2 or seen it. So that that's just something specific. But overall though, again, this movie I would give it a 6. If you have a different opinion on it, if you think it's worse, if you think it's better than what I'm giving it credit for, let me know in the comments below. I don't want it to be like me just hating on this movie. I want to hear what you guys think about it. I just want it to be discussion, if anything. Like I'm discussing my opinion on it. I'm not hating on it just to hate on it. Because I don't have any reason to hate on this. I don't have any reason to hate on anything. Until, you separate emotion from an opinion, it's not a discussion. So I just want it to be open arm discussion about whatever. So however you feel about this movie, let me know in the comments below. If you ever watched it, if you haven't watched it, whatever you want to say, as long as it's not hurtful to somebody. But that's gonna be it for me for now. It's been Infamous Isaac, and I've been talking about Final Fantasy VII Advent Children Complete Edition. Hope you all enjoyed. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, I'll check y'all out. Have a great rest of your day. Peace.